You know what? For years, we went round and round, both of us trying to win the battle and not really building the skills necessary to do conflict and communication well.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey, welcome. We are so glad that you're here, and we're super excited.
Yes.
And the reason we're excited is this is episode number 50. What a milestone. We are excited to be celebrating this milestone. And in celebration, we've got a special gift for you that we're going to talk about a bit later in the episode. Now, if you haven't already, please leave us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen that accepts rating and reviews. Over on Apple Podcasts, we've got 45 ratings right now, and we would love to hear from you. So maybe we can hit 50 ratings with our 50th episode. We would love for you to respond to that. All right, well, let's dive in. You know, you've probably heard the phrase communication is key. And many of us believe that this is really true. But the conversation a lot of times kind of ends there with an expectation that we're just going to communicate better, whatever that actually
it'll
means.
Just happen.
Right? Yeah. You know, this can really be true in pretty much any relationship with friends, with coworkers, with family members. And of course, this can be a challenge in your marriage, which is where we're going to focus today. If you really think about it, you know what you want. You want conversations to be respectful, kind, and patient in your marriage. I know that's what we want too.
Yeah.
You want to experience discussions that create connection even when you're in disagreement.
Sure.
You want to feel heard by your partner, and you want your partner to feel heard by you as well.
Yeah, you want to be known.
But what actually happens all too often is those explosive arguments that leave you hugging opposite sides of the bed when the day finally ends.
Yeah.
Or that cold shoulder avoidance that just puts another brick in that invisible wall that keeps growing between the two of you.
We've been there.
Yeah. And you know, usually if we could pinpoint the things that keep us trapped in these points of conflict and really rob us of the ability to communicate well with each other, it comes down to just a couple of core feelings. One of them is fear. The other one is guilt. Now, I can hear some of you already thinking, what? It's not fear or guilt for me. It's that annoying way that my spouse responds every time a serious conversation pops up. Right. Now, honey, we totally get that, right?
We sure do.
I'll tell you, I've spent a ton of years annoying Kim with my responses.
Yeah, and we love to blame each other, right?
You agreed on that. You agreed with that really quick. Yes, you're right.
It goes both ways.
We do blame each other for that a lot of the time. But you know what? For years, we went round and round, both of us trying to win the battle and not really building the skills necessary to do conflict and communication well.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. We actually have discovered how to change all of this.
We have, I know.
We spent the first 10 years of our marriage doing this communication thing really, really poorly, I believe. Don't you?
I agree.
You agree with that, honey? And two of the things that we've come to realize are this. First, when it comes to communication, it's not about changing your partner's behavior.
Wait, what?
So often that's where we focus, right? It's really about learning to show up differently yourself. So as you listen to this episode today, do everything you can to resist that temptation of thinking, oh man, my husband really needs to listen to this. And instead, just focus on why you need to listen so that you can begin practicing the skills it will take to begin to show up differently in those tough conversations.
Yeah.
And this is something that we get to coach lots of couples to do, and we're really passionate about it because we've seen the difference it can make. So if you want to discover some tools that take what you learned today to a whole new level and really amp it up, we're going to be sharing how you can do that later on in the episode, and we're excited about that. And the second thing we've discovered is one important key to healthy, respectful communication, and that's learning to be assertive.
What?
Yes. Assertiveness is going to help. But if you're anything like us, you might have a bit of a misunderstanding of what assertiveness really means and what it looks like when we're communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Assertiveness is the skill of effective communication and negotiation. Being assertive means being able to stand up for what you believe is right, to ask for what you want, and to say no to what you don't want. All of this in a way that's confident, calm, and respectful.
I love that.
Yeah, this is a really valuable communication skill.
That's an important word too. It's a skill. It's something that we can learn and develop and grow in. It's not I'm born with it and you're not. It's a skill.
Absolutely. Now, successful couples tend to be assertive as they communicate with each other rather than just assuming that your partner is able to read your mind or should be able to figure out what's going on with you. Assertive couples can share honestly and genuinely their true feelings and ask clearly and directly for what they truly want.
Yeah. Now, this sounds really simple, right? But when we run into bumps in the road, those disagreements, misunderstandings, and tensions, then honest, open communication is really anything but simple.
Yeah.
And this is where we tend to become overwhelmed with negative emotions, like the fear and the guilt that I was talking about earlier. And instead of clearly and assertively communicating what's really going on with us, we have this tendency to kind of gravitate to other styles of communication that are not helpful. Sometimes these other styles can even be unhealthy for our own self-worth, and they're definitely detrimental to our relationships. Yeah. And I know this from experience because I've spent way too much time in these other styles of communication.
They cause damage.
So let's just start off by exploring some different styles of communication. There are 4 different communication styles. And whenever we communicate, whether we're aware of it or not, we're using at least one of these 4 communication styles.
Yeah, let's talk about the first one, is passive communication. Now, this is someone who communicates passively, and they tend to hold back and they resist openly expressing what they really feel or what they really want. They don't want to rock the boat, and they're focused on avoiding conflict rather than speaking their truth.
Okay, so we're avoiding rather than speaking our truth. What's an example of something like that?
Well, let's say you've got a date night planned, you and your spouse, and your spouse comes to you and decides that they want to cancel date night. So instead of speaking your truth or being honest about how you feel, you might respond with something like, "Oh, okay, so you think we should cancel our date night because your kids don't want to stay with a babysitter? Yeah, all right, I guess that makes sense." So you back down and you just allow things to happen without really speaking what you think.
So what I hear in that is underneath all that, you don't really want to cancel date night.
Exactly.
And it really doesn't make sense to you. Okay.
You're just going along with it.
Yep.
So passive communication doesn't involve not communicating or saying nothing. Instead, a passive person simply goes along with whatever someone else suggests, even if they really don't agree, like in the example. They often look really busy sometimes in life and active because they're running around taking care of everyone else's stuff, whatever is asked of them, whether it's their responsibility or not, because they kind of have a problem saying no. They just go along with what other people want.
Yeah.
And passive communication seems to help us avoid conflict or having to face negative feelings in the moment. The long-term results can be really negative because what happens is we start to feel chronically dissatisfied with ourselves, even ashamed that we can't stand up for what we want or what we truly believe. We kind of start to feel weak and we suffer with low self-confidence and low self-esteem. And the other problem is that we can build strong resentments towards those around us who always seem to get their way and are calling all the shots. Even though it's really due to our own passivity, we tend to blame and get resentful towards others. So that's passive.
Yeah, that's interesting how I can see fear and guilt playing into that.
Sure.
Fear of wanting to be assertive and say what I want or don't want, and guilt when I don't say what I want or don't want. And that can be really challenging. Yeah. So that's passive communication. Now, aggressive communication is the opposite of that. People that aggressively communicate are trying to force other people to do what they want, and even if it goes against what's best for the other person. And so kind of following that same example that you gave a little bit ago, that might sound like this. Look, we're not canceling date night just because your kids want to manipulate the situation. They can figure things out without intruding on our time together.
Yes, it's right. It's very demanding.
Pretty aggressive. I'm pretty good at this one, honestly. And now, interestingly enough, people who consistently fall into an aggressive or demanding style of communication are almost always feeling fearful underneath. They're threatened or maybe insecure on a deeper level. Just as a bully might use intimidation so that they can feel powerful, they're actually compensating for areas of their life where they're being bullied themselves or where they feel powerless. So communicating aggressively and putting others down makes people like me to feel more powerful and confident. And it kind of temporarily alleviates that deeper insecurity and pain. But the alleviation of that kind of goes away pretty quickly. And I know I've suffered from this one over the years. So when someone, maybe your spouse, but maybe an ex-spouse or even a stepchild starts communicating with you in a really aggressive manner, keep in mind that it's possible they're acting out of a sense of fear or insecurity or helplessness themselves. Now, that doesn't make it okay. We want to learn a new skill, but it can give you a little bit of compassion and empathy for what they might be experiencing. Now, aggressive communication might feel empowering in the moment when you're the one delivering it, as you know, we're trying to control the situation or other people. But the long-term results really don't satisfy. And those feelings of insecurity over time can actually increase, especially when this style of communication eventually drives people away. And then they become kind of estranged from people or isolated, feeling really alone. Yeah. People don't want to be around aggressive communicators for very long. So in the passive style, we give up an unreasonable amount of control over our lives. But in the aggressive style, we're actually trying to take an unreasonable amount of control over other people's lives. And so these are kind of opposite.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first two styles of communication. We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Now, the third style, you guessed it, is passive-aggressive communication.
Oh boy, we've heard that term. I think this term gets thrown around a lot.
It sure does.
And I think it also gets misunderstood a lot.
So let's unpack this. Passive-aggressive communication is a combination of both styles, obviously, but this style of communication is used to accomplish two things. First, we're avoiding conflict by refusing to take responsibility for our true feelings when we're passive. And at the same time, we're attempting to maintain power and get our way through aggression. So we're actually exhibiting both. Now, this can take on a couple of different forms. First, gossip is a form where this, or backstabbing.
Yep.
We can badmouth, we can complain about people behind their backs, and that's one expression of passive aggressive communication.
Yeah, so we're passive in front of whoever we're talking about, but we're aggressive when we're complaining about them to other people.
Exactly. We're venting, we're undermining someone while avoiding honest, direct communication with them about whatever the issue is.
Yeah. I admit I've done that to you before. I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, right.
All right. Now, the second one is one that's really common in marriage, and this is sarcasm.
Oh, sure. Whatever.
Now, sarcasm is a common form of passive-aggressive communication. And this is where we're able to take a stab at someone we're upset with, kind of like, we haven't had a date night in months. His kids aren't on board with it, and they call all the shots around here. So you're kind of taking a shot either in front of them or behind their back. But at the same time, we're also deflecting any conflict, because then if it comes out, we can say, oh, I was just kidding.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, even though we really aren't kidding.
Yeah. A lot of times sarcasm comes out as exaggeration, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like in your example, you're like, oh, we haven't had a date night in months.
Yep,
well, that kind of
not.
backfires, because it's like, well, wait a second. 2 weeks ago, we went to
it's probably not true.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, another way that passive aggressive communication sometimes comes out is in our behavior. When someone asks us to do something that we'd rather not do, we kind of passively agree to doing it so that we can avoid having to say no. But then we intentionally do a really bad job so that they won't ask us to do it again in the future. So we're manipulating behind the scenes, but up front, we're, oh, yes, I'll do that.
Or they just avoid doing it altogether. They
Yeah,
say, yeah,
yeah.
I'll do that. And then use, oh, I forgot.
Yeah, or
Well,
I didn't have time. Yeah. So passive aggressive communication has the appearance of working well on the outside, right? We get what we want without having to face any of the challenging realities of the relationship. But in the long run, it will backfire. People on the receiving end become frustrated because they don't seem to know where they stand with us or how we really feel. They come to believe they don't really know us at all when we use this style.
Yeah.
This will eventually lead to disconnection and possibly even the loss of relationship. And there's another major downside to passive aggressive communication for people that continually use this style. They know deep down that they aren't truly being honest in their relationships with others, and this leads to feelings of, you guessed it, guilt.
Yeah.
Right? And remorse, especially when their behaviors are hurtful to those that they care about. When you get caught gossiping about someone, that causes major damage.
Yep.
And because they aren't able to really be open or vulnerable about how they truly feel, they tend to feel disconnected and unknown in their relationships. That's
so
not good either.
They're actually isolating themselves without really
we're not able to
realizing it.
be vulnerable.
I think I've lived all three of these.
I definitely have to.
I've used passive. I've used aggressive. I've used passive aggressive. Maybe part of the reason that we keep using these is because none of them seem to work. And so we just keep trying to vacillate between what we see other people doing or what we've watched when we grew up and all that.
But they really don't work.
Exactly. And so the antidote to this is assertive communication. Now, assertive communication means that we clearly and respectfully ask for what we want, and we say no to the things that we don't want. So if we want to keep going on with this example that we used a little while ago, we might say something like this. Look, I would like us to spend time investing in our relationship by connecting on a date night. And I think once the kids get used to the new babysitter, everything should be okay for them. Can we talk about that?
It's respectful.
It's kind, it's respectful, it's gentle, and it's clearly expressing what we're after. So being assertive is not being aggressive or demanding, as some might think. And I think that's a real confusion.
Yeah.
People don't realize assertiveness is actually a good thing. It's honestly expressing what's really going on for me. And it's about being real with my feelings and what's really important without being rude or pushy or disrespectful.
Exactly.
So assertive communication is this middle ground between passive and aggressive. It's almost always the most effective way of interacting and growing healthy relationships with others. In a nutshell, assertive communication means respecting yourself and respecting other people in the way that you communicate.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a bit about psychologist, writer, teacher, podcaster Nick Wignall. We love a lot of his work.
Mm-hmm.
And in his step-by-step guide to becoming more assertive, we put a link to that in the show notes, by the way, he says that the benefits of becoming more assertive are too many to list entirely. In other words, there's this incredible value to using the assertive style in communication to the person who's using it.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a few that were on Nick's list in his guide. One, he says it's decreased social anxiety and the need for approval.
Another one of the benefits he lists is becoming more relaxed and less stressed.
Yeah, that's great. He also says increased self-confidence and self-respect is a benefit.
And being less resentful of others.
Yeah, that's great. That's always nice.
Yes.
And really just improved relationships and partnerships.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that when I'm the one who changes my communication, I'm also the one who has some benefit,
Right.
which is great. Now, who doesn't want more of that,
Yeah.
right? This is huge for those of us who struggle with any degree or even a hint of fear of conflict.
Yeah,
Right.
that's huge for me. I'm a recovering avoider.
Yes, your tendency is to be an avoider.
Yes.
This is also a huge thing for anyone who doesn't feel like they have a voice or feels like they're not really known within the context of relationship. They long to be heard and truly known, but if they're not communicating assertively, if they're choosing one of those other communication styles, it can be really difficult for other people to really understand who they are and what they desire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, all of this is huge if you're navigating the complexities of blending. And it's true with exes, it's true with stepkids and everything else. But again, today we're focused really on our marriage. You know, we've really struggled
We
with this
have.
over the years. And I'd say the first 10 years of our marriage were really, really rocky in a lot of different ways that centered around communication.
Definitely.
I spent a ton of time in that aggressive mindset. I wanted to get what I wanted. I had to fight for what I wanted. These are stories that were in my head. And so I was going to tell you, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, this is how it is.
I was going to take charge. And I really hurt you through that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was passive. I would back down and I was fearful. And I think a lot of how that impacted me was negative thoughts about you. I would do what you wanted. I would do things your way, whether it was a parenting decision or how we were going to handle negotiations with my ex or whatever it was. I would go along. I didn't want to rock the boat or have conflict, but then I would have negative thoughts about you and they would come out in other ways, like withdrawing from you, shutting down or withholding. Oh, he strong-armed me the other day. So today I'm not
you're gonna get your way.
Yep. And it was, but it was passively. It was, I'm just going to withhold.
Yeah.
And then the resentments. I had a lot of resentments towards you for a lot of years, and it's just not honoring to our marriage. It tears down that bond that you have as a couple because you're not making love deposits about your spouse in your own mind, in your own heart. You're actually doing just the opposite. You're withdrawing. Yeah. And so even if it doesn't manifest in your actions or behaviors, if it's going on in your mind and your thoughts, it's really devastating and damaging to your relationship overall.
Yeah, that's such
At
a great.
It was for us.
Yeah, and it's such a great point that so much of this really starts in our head. It starts about what we think about our spouse, what we think about ourselves, and what we think about how we're going to get what we're really after when it comes to marriage. And these last almost 10 years of our marriage, like we've put a lot of work into figuring out this communication thing, not only in this focus that we have today on assertiveness,
right,
but in lots of different areas of the way that we handle conflict together. And man, I would say the last probably 2 or 3 years, we're doing better than we ever have.
Yeah.
But it's because we've taken the time to figure out what the skills are and then practice the skills. And that's something that I said a lot earlier when you use the word skill, and just reminding everybody listening that this stuff isn't, oh, I'm not good at this, or you're not, he's not good at this, whatever. It really is, wait, there's some things we can learn and there's some things we can practice. And that means skill.
Yeah. And when we can make a switch and start communicating what we truly want and what we truly feel, it's just amazing the difference it makes. I mean, I will never go back to my passive days because I was trapped. I was trapped in my own mind.
Yep.
All right. So now we know which communication styles to avoid, right? We talked about those and we understand how important it is to become more assertive. But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
And what are the roadblocks that we'll need to get past as we grow this skill of communication? Because there are going to be roadblocks, and we've experienced those. So first, let's talk about these roadblocks, because we might agree that we need to be more assertive in our communication. But like I said, this isn't always easy, especially in certain situations and in specific relationships. And you probably know which ones those are for you. The main reason why assertive communication is so challenging is because most of us we tend to get hung up on some fear, some form of fear. Maybe we're afraid what people are going to think of us, or we worry how we'll be judged if we're really honest, so we stay silent, or we just go along. Maybe we're afraid to rock the boat or create any disagreement, so we just passively agree, even when it's not what we really want or believe. Fear keeps us stuck in passivity.
Yeah.
We might also get hung up on some nagging concerns. This is kind of where I used to get hung up. We're probably aware that if we communicate assertively, there could be some discomfort and possibly some backlash.
That is a reality, yep.
And even though this is most likely temporary, we still want to avoid having to even go there, right? If I can avoid it. We have concerns that speaking up for what we really want is going to create anxiety, and we can get really nervous about how it's going to be received on the other end. Maybe we're concerned that honestly expressing ourselves will leave us feeling vulnerable and possibly expose our insecurities or our fears. That's something that we need to work through. Taking responsibility for how we communicate and being real with others can be a challenge. It's going to most likely stir up some challenging emotions, and we might need to work through some stuff. And this is going to take some effort to get beyond this barrier.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, so you talk a lot about fear, but also we can allow guilt to interfere and take over, which will get in the way of assertive communication. Guilt's a really common trap. We worry about how guilty we're going to feel when we don't go along with what someone else wants, or when we say no to what they do want, or we allow others to make us feel guilty or selfish for just simply speaking our truth and what we really want, what we really believe. All of these things, fear, discomfort, nagging concerns, and guilt, they keep us away from freely expressing what we want and what we don't want. They keep us stuck in the unhealthy communication styles of passivity, aggression, or that passive-aggressive style. And really, they keep us stuck in avoidance.
Yeah, what I like to say is avoidance doesn't solve problems.
That's right.
Remember, I'm a recovering avoider. And so I discovered that the hard way. But let's just listen to this quote from Nick Wignall's guide. The initial discomfort of assertiveness can be even stronger when the people in our lives aren't used to us acting this way. Others may say or imply that we're selfish by not going along with their requests. Or our attempts at being more direct and respectful may be met with initial doubt or mistrust. But ultimately, the habit of communicating assertively or clearly and respectfully expressing our wishes and feelings leads to the best outcomes in the long run. You may experience both internal and external challenges as you move toward more assertive communication, but it's well worth it.
That's right.
The benefits far outweigh any of these temporary discomforts. They really do.
Yeah. The concept is simple, but that doesn't mean the application isn't hard.
But you can do it. All right. So we're going to touch base on some steps. We have 10 tips for you that you can take towards becoming more assertive in your communication.
That's right. We're going to kind of hit them rapid fire. So you might want to grab a pen and pencil or get ready to hit the rewind button if you need to. So our 10 tips. First of all, I love what our friends over at Vital Smarts say, that you don't want to make the fool's choice.
The fool's choice.
Yes.
Wow, so tell us more.
The fool's choice is I have to either tell the truth or try to keep a friend.
You can't have both.
That's what the fool's choice is all about. This is about our mindset. It's this belief that we can't tell the truth and keep our relationship at the same time. But we've got to own the reality that we can tell our truth. We can really speak what we want and build healthy relationships at the same time and really own it and believe it.
So you're not going to fall for that lie.
That's right.
Okay.
We're going after both.
That's the first tip is don't make that fool's choice. The second tip is you want to keep in mind that assertiveness is a skill that needs to be developed and practiced over time.
We can't say that enough.
Yes, this will take some effort, and it's going to really take a commitment to facing and overcoming your discomfort and your avoidance, getting past those barriers, especially if you've been leaning heavily on those other less healthy styles of communication. So you'll want to start off slowly and focus on being more assertive in those low stake situations until you can improve and gradually become more natural with assertive communication.
Yeah.
So as you gain confidence in those low stake areas of your life, maybe with your spouse or with close friends that are going to be more accepting, then you can work up to assertiveness in bigger and higher stake situations, like with your boss or an ex-spouse.
Yep.
Take it slow and be patient with yourself as you learn this new skill. Remember this, imperfect progress is still progress. So don't expect perfection right out of the gate. Give yourself some grace, but keep at it.
Yeah. Tip number 3, you can practice being more assertive with strangers.
Yeah, low stakes.
Maybe you're being seated at a restaurant, but you want to sit at a different table. Ask for it. That's a low stakes way with strangers to be a little bit more assertive. Try it out. See what it feels like when you ask for something different and start to get comfortable with respectful assertiveness in those public settings. That's a great way to just start practicing. Or, tip number 4, get comfortable saying no. In order to build up your tolerance for discomfort, practice saying no when someone asks you to do something that's maybe unreasonable or that you just simply don't want to do. Understand up front that you're going to feel uncomfortable and maybe even a little bit fearful. Maybe you'll feel a little bit guilty, but we're going to push past those and we're going to do that anyway. And so a simple, straightforward no without an apology is probably not as upsetting or weighty as you really think it's going to be. A lot of times we build it up in our minds bigger than the reality it is. So try it out and just practice saying no.
Yeah. Tip number 5 is stop apologizing. Sometimes we tend to say we're sorry because we might be feeling uncomfortable with the fact that someone else is uncomfortable. And so then we attempt to make things better or easier by relieving the discomfort with an apology.
And don't get this wrong. We're not saying to abandon social graces or don't use your manners, but sometimes we just apologize way too much.
Yeah. If you haven't actually done anything wrong, then you really don't need to apologize for it, right? And by the way, assertive communication is not wrong or bad. It's real, it's honest, and it's an expression of your true self. So as long as you're delivering your assertiveness in a respectful way, you've got nothing to be sorry about or to apologize for.
That's right. That's right. So tip number 6, stop trying to manage other people's feelings. Man, I am so good at trying to manage other people's feelings, but the key word there is trying. I'm really good at trying, but I never succeed. I don't know what the deal is, right? Look, empathy is a great quality, being able to really identify with and connect with the people around you. But when you start to feel like you're responsible for how other people feel, you've actually crossed the line into codependency. And I know this from experience. I'm a recovering codependent. I've had to work really hard on this. So instead of always trying to make other people feel better, simply acknowledge that they're having a hard time and leave it at that. You can recognize and validate their discomfort without jumping in to try and fix it or rescue them and end up in that passive mindset simply because you don't want to hurt their feelings.
Right.
So stop trying to manage other people's feelings. Tip number 7 is focus on regulating your own feelings. So now this is kind of the opposite of that,
That's
right?
Something you have control over.
Yes. In those moments where you know you need to assertively communicate, but you're hesitant because you got some concerns or you're just feeling fearful or guilty, stop and examine where your feelings might be coming from, if they reflect the truth about you. Now, earlier, Kim mentioned that we coach couples around exactly how to do this in a simple, practical way. And so to celebrate our 50th episode, this is episode number 50, we're offering $100 off this coaching experience. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and then use the coupon code episode 50 at checkout. We're going to make it available to you all the way until October 1st of 2020. And we're going to put all that information in the show notes for you to go check that out. And here's what you're going to discover in this experience. We're going to teach you how to experience peace in the midst of your conflict, regardless of how your spouse behaves, right? This is about focusing on our own emotions. When you can do that, you're going to be able to show up well in the conversation, even when your emotions are triggered. And when you do that, everything about your disagreements, everything that you experience with conflict completely changes. It helps you stay united even when you don't see eye to eye. And it's all something that you can control. It's not about controlling your partner. It's really about focusing on your own feelings and regulating your own emotions. So you might want to go check that link out. Use that coupon code. We can't wait to connect with you and help you learn some of these skills.
We're really passionate about that one.
That's right.
All right, on to tip number 8. Learn how to handle conflict well. You know, if fear of conflict is holding you back from being assertive, we want you to go back and listen to episode 35. Are you controlling conflict or is it controlling you? And if you generally avoid conflict at all costs, try changing your mindset around it. Think of conflict as an opportunity to work through issues and actually strengthen your relationship. And keep in mind that the cost of avoidance is extremely high. I know this from personal experience. Unresolved issues don't stay hidden for long. And if you aren't talking these things out, you're acting them out. They're coming out in other ways that are toxic. And this is where passive aggressive behavior stems from, and avoiding conflict is not a healthy response. So learn how to handle conflict well. Another area where you can learn is tip number 9, learn about healthy boundaries and what they look like for you. A lot of times people think that boundaries are all about saying no to everything. No. But they're really about learning when to say no and when to say yes. So understanding the importance of boundaries and how to manage your personal boundaries, that's really going to help you to respond with assertive communication when you're making decisions that are going to impact your boundaries. This is a life skill everyone needs. So if you need some insight around that, go back and listen to episode 27. And we're going to link both those episodes, the one on conflict and the one on boundaries, in the show notes, just to make it really easy for you.
Yeah, and that's great. You know, that coaching program that we just talked about, that's all about learning how to handle conflict.
Yep.
And we do a whole session just on boundaries.
Yep.
So you can do a little deeper dive too if you decide to join us. Let's talk about the final tip, number 10.
All right.
We've got to recognize the difference between real and fake guilt.
Yes.
So guilt is an emotion that we experience when we've done something wrong, not when someone else says or implies that we've done something wrong.
Yes,
that's
big difference.
a big difference. That's the way Nick Wignall puts it. Now, as you practice assertive communication and you experience a feeling of guilt, you've got to ask yourself this question: have I actually done something wrong? If the answer is no, then you've got to practice tolerating that discomfort of the fake guilt, and you kind of build your resilience up to it before it finally goes away. You know,
Get used to it.
Yeah, don't allow yourself to get blindsided by fake guilt as you become more assertive with your communication, and don't allow others to label you as selfish for expressing what you truly want.
Yeah.
It's okay to express
It's okay
what
to be
you truly
real.
want. Yeah. So if you need just a little bit more support with managing that guilt, we've linked to a blog article called How to Resolve Painful Guilt and Regret. You might want to go check that out. And of course, we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
So remember, as you consider and practice these 10 tips, that becoming more assertive will feel uncomfortable at first.
That's
I guarantee it.
Anytime we change something, we get uncomfortable.
Yeah, or grow. And you know, it will probably be uncomfortable for the people around you too, who are used to you being less assertive. You'll need to expect this discomfort in the beginning so that you aren't blindsided by it in the moment. Okay, it's normal and it's okay. But don't let temporary discomfort stop you from developing better communication skills and stronger relationships. It's so worth it. It really is.
And, you know, I've actually learned to appreciate you becoming more assertive rather than passive. And even though it was uncomfortable for me at first, I so much more know where I stand now because of your assertiveness.
And I feel more known.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Because you've been able to express more. And on the flip side, you know, it's really uncomfortable. It can be really challenging. If you're struggling with aggression like I did, it can be really uncomfortable to feel like you're holding back. But ultimately, what I've discovered is it's not about holding back. It's actually about being able to express myself in a way that's clear and respectful so that you can actually hear.
Yeah, and I just want to say I appreciate that you've become more assertive rather than aggressive in your communication, because I do hear you better and I can take in what you're saying and respond in a better way when I'm not being bullied.
Yeah.
Right?
This all sounds really simple on a podcast, but the truth is it's hard. It's hard work, but it's so worth the effort.
Yes, it is.
And so we just want to encourage you to keep moving forward. You know, like we said multiple times, communication is a skill and we can all improve on that skill. And I'd even say that this is probably one of the most impactful skills that we've found in our marriage that's helped us to turn things around from staying stuck in painful cycles of conflict to where we are now.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we're really able to respectfully and openly communicate assertively with each other, even when we don't agree on something.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, this has enabled us to understand and know each other better, and it's helped us to stay connected when we hit those stressful bumps in the road.
Yeah.
And we've worked with enough couples, and we've been around enough people who really practice these skills to know that this can be true for you too, as you're listening. So remember, you can go check out our coaching program. You can use that coupon code for $100 off.
Yeah.
And you can go through every one of these tips, these 10 tips that we said, and just start practicing. Just make one change this week. And would you be so kind as to leave a rating and a review? And let's see if we can get to 50 ratings for our 50th episode.
That would be
We
awesome.
love that. All right. Well, I hope this has been valuable for you, and that makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.